Moses was a priest, prophet, and king, but could he have also been a pharaoh? Today, we are going to examine some historical facts that are rarely talked about in detail from the life of this dynamic biblical figure. Moses' parents were Amram and Jochebed, and according to the Bible, they belonged to the tribe of Levi. And this means that Moses was born into the Hebrew bloodline that were called to be the priesthood of the highest God. Jochebed gave birth to Moses during a time when Pharaoh had ordered all Hebrew baby boys to be killed. To save her son's life, she placed him in a basket and set it adrift on the Nile River. The basket was discovered by Pharaoh's daughter, who some ancient scholars suggest could have been Hatshepsut's daughter of Thutmose I and his great royal wife, Ahmose. The daughter of Pharaoh took pity on the baby and raised him as her own. The book of Jasher explains that after finding the child, Pharaoh's daughter tried to find a nurse for the baby among the Egyptian women, but baby Moses wouldn't nurse from any of them. Eventually, Miriam approached Pharaoh's daughter and told her that she knew a nurse among the Hebrew women who could nurse the child. And she returned Moses to their mother Jochebed, who was paid to take care of him. Moses was a type of Christ in that he was a lawgiver. He was sent to deliver his people, and he was an intercessor between God and the children of Israel. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses is recorded saying, "The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him ye shall hearken." This is one of the many prophecies Moses made concerning Yeshua HaMashiach. He is considered the most important prophet in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and all Abrahamic religions. Moses led the people of Israel out of slavery in Egypt. God asked Moses to lead the Israelites to the promised land, and despite his initial reluctance, Moses returned to Egypt, challenged Pharaoh, and demanded freedom for his people, and then led the Israelites through the desert toward the Red Sea. But now we must go back to the time when Moses was still living in the Pharaoh's house, because it is there where he was learned all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and became mighty in words and in deeds. It was at this time Moses rose to the position of general in the Egyptian army. This is not mentioned in the Bible, but his time as an Egyptian military general. And later king of Ethiopia is written about extensively in the book of Jasher, and verified by the historians Flavius Josephus and Irenaeus of Lyons. Josephus says that when Moses was nourished in the palace, he was appointed general of the army against the Ethiopians and conquered them. When he married that king's daughter, because out of her affection for him, she delivered the city up to him. Thus then the Ethiopians, though they were enemies, eventually became so fond of Moses that they even learned from him the custom of circumcision, and not they only, but also all the priests. It is noteworthy that the 5th century BCE Greek historian Herodotus also affirmed that the Ethiopians learned circumcision from an Egyptian source. The 2nd century CE, Bishop Irenaeus wrote the following about the account. Josephus says that when Moses was nourished in the palace, he was appointed general of the army against the Ethiopians, and conquered them when he married that king's daughter, because out of her affection for him, she delivered the city up to him. Hints of different elements of this story can be found in other pre-Josephus sources. For example, the 1st century BCE Greek historian Strabo wrote of the island city Meru, surrounded by the rivers Josephus described, and the early 1st century Roman historian Pliny the Elder wrote of ibises being used by the Egyptians against snakes.
Perhaps this special Ethiopian connection with Moses and the Israelites could explain why Queen of Sheba, traditionally held to be Queen of Ethiopia, Saba Meroe, took such a personal interest in visiting King Solomon in the first place. The reason why her nation sent such an enormous train of gifts. After all, Sheba, Saba, was the name of the very territory cited by Josephus as being conquered by Moses and from which he took his wife. Tharbis was the daughter of the king of the Ethiopians. She happened to see Moses as he led the army near the walls and fought with great courage, and admiring the subtlety of his undertakings and believing him to be the author of the Egyptians' success, when they had before despaired of recovering their liberty, and to be the occasion of the great danger the Ethiopians were in. When they had before boasted of their great achievements, she fell deeply in love with him, and upon the prevalence of that passion, sent to him the most faithful of all her servants to discourse with him about their marriage. He thereupon accepted the offer on condition she would procure the delivering up of the city, and gave her the assurance of an oath to take her to his wife, and that when he had once taken possession of the city he would not break his oath to her. No sooner was the agreement made, but it took effect immediately. And when Moses had cut off the Ethiopians, he gave thanks to God and consummated his marriage and led the Egyptians back to their own land. The account above states that it was the daughter of the king of Ethiopia that married Moses, and on the other hand, in the book of Jasher, it was recorded that Moses married the wife of the late Ethiopian king who died in battle, but he was never intimate with her. Either way, we know he married one of them because it became a point of contention in the book of Numbers. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. We know that Hebrews were forbidden from taking foreign wives, but we also know that this issue wasn't brought up for Zipporah, the daughter of Reuel, because they were from the land of Midian. For Moses to properly rule over the Ethiopia as king, he had to follow the matriarchal practices of the culture and be united to the Kandake. Kandake was the Meroitic term for the sister of the king of Cush, who, due to the matrilineal succession, would bear the next heir, making her a queen mother. She had her own court, probably acted as a landholder, and held a prominent secular role as regent. Contemporary Greek and Roman sources treated it incorrectly as a name. The name Candace is derived from the way the word is used in the New Testament. This history of Moses as general of the Egyptians against the Ethiopians is wholly omitted in our Bibles, but is thus by Irenaeus from Josephus, and that soon after his own age. Josephus says that when Moses was nourished in the palace, he was appointed general of the army against the Ethiopians, and conquered them when he married that king's daughter, because out of her affection for him, she delivered the city up to him. See the fragments of Irenaeus, nor perhaps did St. Stephen refer to anything else when he said of Moses, before he was sent by God to the Israelites, that he was not only learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, but was also mighty in words and in deeds, Acts 7 verse 22. Thus then the Ethiopians, though they were enemies, eventually became so fond of Moses that they even learned from him the custom of circumcision, and not they only, but also all the priests. It is noteworthy that the 5th century BCE Greek historian Herodotus also affirmed that the Ethiopians learned circumcision from an Egyptian source. The 2nd century CE bishop Irenaeus wrote the following about the account. Josephus says that when Moses was nourished in the palace, he was appointed general of the army against the Ethiopians, and conquered them, when he married that king's daughter, because out of her affection for him she delivered the city up to him. Hints of different elements of the story can be found in other pre-Josephus sources. For example, the 1st century BCE Greek historian Strabo wrote of the island city Meroe, surrounded by the rivers Josephus described. And the early 1st century Roman historian Pliny the Elder wrote of ibises being used by the Egyptians against serpents in their campaigns. And perhaps this special Ethiopian connection with Moses and the Israelites could help explain why the later Queen of Sheba, traditionally held to be Queen of Ethiopia, also known as Saba or Meroe, took such a personal interest in visiting King Solomon in the first place. The reason why her nation sent such an enormous train of gifts, as mentioned in 1 Kings chapter 10 and Psalm 68 verses 30 to 32. After all, Saba was the name of the very territory cited by Josephus as being conquered by Moses, and from which he took his wife. Tharbis was the daughter of the king of the Ethiopians. She happened to see Moses as he led the army near the walls, and fought with great courage, and admiring the subtlety of his undertakings, and believing him to be the author of the Egyptians' success, when they had before despaired of recovering their liberty, and to be the occasion of the great danger the Ethiopians were in, when they had before boasted of their great achievements, she fell deeply in love with him, and upon the prevalences of that passion sent to him the most faithful of all her servants to discourse with him about their marriage. He thereupon accepted the offer on condition she would procure the delivering up of the city, and gave her the assurance of an oath to take her to his wife, and that when he had once taken possession of the city, he would not break his oath to her. No sooner was the agreement made, but it took effect immediately. And when Moses had cut off the Ethiopians, he gave thanks to God, and consummated his marriage, and led the Egyptians back to their own land. Book of Jasher 72, verses 21 to 42. At that time that the war and the siege were against Cush, Moses fled from Egypt from Pharaoh, who sought to kill him for having slain the Egyptian. And Moses was 18 years old when he fled from Egypt from the presence of Pharaoh. And he fled and escaped to the camp of Kikianus, which at that time was besieging Cush. And Moses was 9 years in the camp of Kikianus, king of Cush, all the time that they were besieging Cush. And Moses went out and came in with them. And the king and princes and all the fighting men loved Moses, for he was great and worthy. His stature was like a noble lion, his face was like the sun, and his strength was like that of a lion, and he was counselor to the king. And at the end of 9 years Kikianus was seized with a mortal disease, and his illness prevailed over him, and he died on the 7th day. So his servants embalmed him, and carried him, and buried him opposite the city gate to the north of the land of Egypt, and they built over him an elegant, strong, and high building, and they placed great stones below, and the king's scribes engraved upon those stones all the might of their king Kikianus, and all his battles which he had fought. Behold, they are written there at this day. Now after the death of Kikianus, king of Cush, it grieved his men and troops greatly on account of the war. So they said one to the other, "Give us counsel what we are to do at this time, as we have resided in the wilderness 9 years away from our homes. If we say we will fight against the city, many of us will fall wounded or killed. And if we remain here in the siege, we shall also die. For now all the kings of Aram and of the children of the east will hear that our king is dead. And they will attack us suddenly in a hostile manner, and they will fight against us and leave no remnant of us. Now therefore let us go and make a king over us, and let us remain in the siege until the city is delivered up to us." And they wished to choose on that day a man for king from the army of Kikianus. And they found no object of their choice like Moses to reign over them. And they hastened and stripped off each man his garments, and cast them upon the ground. And they made a great heap, and placed Moses thereon. And they rose up, and blew with trumpets, and called out before him, and said, "May the king live, may the king live." And all the people and nobles swore unto him to give him for a wife Adoniah the queen, the Cushite, wife of Kikianus. And they made Moses king over them on that day. And all the people of Cush issued a proclamation on that day, saying, "Every man must give something to Moses of what is in his possession." And they spread out a sheet upon the heap, and every man cast into it something of what he had, one a gold earring, and the other a coin. Also of onyx stones, bdellium, pearls, and marble did the children of Cush cast unto Moses upon the heap, also silver and gold in great abundance. And Moses took all the silver and gold, all the vessels, and the bdellium and onyx stones, which all the children of Cush had given to him, and he placed them amongst his treasures. Jasher 73, verses 1 to 48. In the 55th year of the reign of Pharaoh king of Egypt, that is, in the 157th year of the Israelites going down into Egypt, reigned Moses in Cush. Moses was 27 years old when he began to reign over Cush, and 40 years did he reign. And the Lord granted Moses favor and grace in the eyes of all the children of Cush, and the children of Cush loved him exceedingly. So Moses was favored by the Lord and by men. And in the 7th day of his reign, all the children of Cush assembled and came before Moses and bowed down to him to the ground. And all the children spoke together in the presence of the king, saying, "Give us counsel that we may see what is to be done to this city. For it is now 9 years that we have been besieging round about the city, and have not seen our children and our wives. The king answered them, saying, If you will hearken to my voice in all that I shall command you, then will the Lord give the city into our hands, and we shall subdue it. For if we fight with them as in the former battle which we had with them before the death of Kikianus, many of us will fall wounded as before. Now therefore, behold, here is counsel for you in this matter. If you will hearken to my voice, then will the city be delivered into our hands. So all the forces answered the king, saying, All that our Lord shall command, that will we do. And Moses said unto them, Pass through and proclaim a voice in the whole camp unto all the people, saying, Thus says the king, Go into the forest, and bring with you of the young ones of the stalk, each man a young one in his hand. And any person transgressing the word of the king, who shall not bring his young one, he shall die. And the king will take all belonging to him. And when you shall bring them, they shall be in your keeping. You shall rear them until they grow up, and you shall teach them to dart upon, as is the way of the young ones of the hawk. So all the children of Cush heard the words of Moses. And they rose up and caused a proclamation to be issued throughout the camp, saying, Unto you, all the children of Cush, the king's order is that you go all together to the forest, and catch there the young storks, each man his young one in his hand, and you shall bring them home. And any person violating the order of the king shall die, and the king will take all that belongs to him. And all the people did so, and they went out to the wood, and they climbed the fir trees, and caught each man a young one in his hand, all the young of the storks. And they brought them into the desert, and reared them by order of the king, and they taught them to dart upon, like the young hawks. And after the young storks were reared, the king ordered them to be hungered for 3 days, and all the people did so. And on the 3rd day the king said unto them, Strengthen yourselves, and become valiant men, and put on each man his armor, and gird on his sword upon him, and ride each man his horse, and take each his young stork in his hand. And we will rise and fight against the city at the place where the serpents are. And all the people did as the king had ordered. And they took each man his young one in his hand, and they went away. And when they came to the place of the serpents, the king said to them, Send forth each man his young stork upon the serpents. And they sent forth each man his young stork at the king's order. And the young storks ran upon the serpents, and they devoured them all, and destroyed them out of that place. And when the king and people had seen that all the serpents were destroyed in that place, all the people set up a great shout. And they approached and fought against the city, and took it and subdued it, and they entered the city. And there died on that day 1,100 men of the people of the city, all that inhabited the city, but of the people besieging not one died. So all the children of Cush went each to his home, to his wife and children, and to all belonging to him. And Balaam the magician, when he saw that the city was taken, he opened the gate, and he and his 2 sons and 8 brothers fled, and returned to Egypt, to Pharaoh king of Egypt. They are the sorcerers and magicians who are mentioned in the book of the law, standing against Moses when the Lord brought the plagues upon Egypt. Moses took the city by his wisdom, and the children of Cush placed him on the throne instead of Kikianus king of Cush. And they placed the royal crown upon his head. And they gave him for a wife Adoniah the Cushite queen, wife of Kikianus. And Moses feared the Lord God of his fathers, so that he came not to her, nor did he turn his eyes to her. For Moses remembered how Abraham had made his servant Eliezer swear, saying unto him, Thou shalt not take a woman from the daughters of Canaan for my son Isaac. Also what Isaac did when Jacob had fled from his brother, when he commanded him, saying, Thou shalt not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, nor make alliance with any of the children of Ham. For the Lord our God gave Ham the son of Noah and his children and all his seed as slaves to the children of Shem and to the children of Japheth, and unto their seed after them for slaves forever. Therefore Moses turned not his heart nor his eyes to the wife of Kikianus all the days that he reigned over Cush. And Moses feared the Lord his God all his life, and Moses walked before the Lord in truth with all his heart and soul. He turned not from the right way all the days of his life. He declined not from the way either to the right or to the left, in which Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had walked. And Moses strengthened himself in the kingdom of the children of Cush, and he guided the children of Cush with his usual wisdom, and Moses prospered in his kingdom. And at that time Aram and the children of the east heard that Kikianus king of Cush had died. So Aram and the children of the east rebelled against Cush in those days. And Moses gathered all the children of Cush, a people very mighty, about 30,000 men, and he went forth to fight with Aram and the children of the east. And they went at first to the children of the east, and when the children of the east heard their report, they went to meet them and engaged in battle with them. And the war was severe against the children of the east, so the Lord gave all the children of the east into the hand of Moses, and about 300 men were slain. And all the children of the east turned back and retreated. So Moses and the children of Cush followed them and subdued them and put a tax upon them, as was their custom. So Moses and all the people with him passed from there to the land of Aram for battle. And the people of Aram also went to meet them, and they fought against them. And the Lord delivered them into the hand of Moses, and many of the men of Aram fell down wounded. And Aram also was subdued by Moses and the people of Cush, and gave their usual tax. And Moses brought Aram and the children of the east under subjection to the children of Cush, and Moses and all the people who were with him turned to the land of Cush. And Moses strengthened himself in the kingdom of the children of Cush, and the Lord was with him, and all the children of Cush were afraid of him. Jasher 76 verses 1 to 12. And Moses the son of Amram was still king in the land of Cush in those days, and he prospered in his kingdom. And he conducted the government of the children of Cush in justice, in righteousness and integrity. And all the children of Cush loved Moses all the days that he reigned over them, and all the inhabitants of the land of Cush were greatly afraid of him. And in the 40th year of the reign of Moses over Cush, Moses was sitting on the royal throne, whilst Adoniah the queen was before him, and all the nobles were sitting around him. And Adoniah the queen said before the king and the princes, "What is this thing which you, the children of Cush, have done for this long time? Surely you know that for 40 years that this man has reigned over Cush, he has not approached me, nor has he served the gods of the children of Cush. Now therefore hear, O ye children of Cush, and let this man no more reign over you, as he is not of our flesh. Behold, Menacrus, my son is grown up. Let him reign over you, for it is better for you to serve the son of your Lord than to serve a stranger, slave of the king of Egypt." And all the people and nobles of the children of Cush heard the words which Adoniah the queen had spoken in their ears. And all the people were preparing until the evening, and in the morning they rose up early and made Menacrus, son of Kikianus, king over them. And all the children of Cush were afraid to stretch forth their hand against Moses. For the Lord was with Moses, and the children of Cush remembered the oath which they swore unto Moses. Therefore they did no harm to him. But the children of Cush gave many presents to Moses, and sent him from them with great honor. So Moses went forth from the land of Cush, and went home and ceased to reign over Cush. And Moses was 66 years old when he went out of the land of Cush. For the thing was from the Lord, for the period had arrived which he had appointed in the days of old, to bring forth Israel from the affliction of the children of Ham.